Hi, everyone, and welcome to OneMicNite, the podcast that brings you stories of artists and people on their journey, helping to guide, answer questions, and motivate you in life and the business. You already know who I am. It's Marcos Luis, and I'm back, and I want to thank you guys all for joining me for the 18th year of OneMicNite. That's right, we've been around for 18 years, and I'm so happy. Thank you. You've seen us metamorphosize into many things, starting out as an open mic, and now we're doing virtual podcasts and series on video. So thank you for being along with me on this journey. Today, my guest is exceptional. You're going to love it. I'm excited. I'm always excited when I get to talk to filmmakers and creatives along the lines of that. His name is André Joseph. He is the founder of S5Ep.26. He's a filmmaker. He's a writer. He's award-winning. And he's also a teacher and educator. And we're going to get into that in just a minute. So please welcome him to the show. How you doing, André?
Doing very well this morning. Good to be here.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule. I appreciate it. Listen, I have questions. You got it. The first question is, who is André Joseph?
So, who is André Joseph? I am a 17-year professional as a director, screenwriter, producer, actor, and also a video editor. And I'm based in New York City. I have my production company, Epix Productions. I'm right now on my fourth feature film that's in post-production. And I got a number of short films that I've made over the years and, still hanging in there.
That's big. That's a big accomplishment. Where are you from? Where'd you start out? Where were you born and raised?
I was born and raised in Staten Island, New York.
A New
Basically,
Yorker.
yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
all my life, never left me. Yeah, and like my interest in film kind of happened probably towards my teen years. As a kid, it used to be watching old TV shows and cartoons and whatever Disney movies my parents would rent and taking my action figures because I was an avid toy collector in those days and I would just reenact things that I saw on television all the time. And I would also go to my grandmother's place in Brooklyn whenever my parents were at work or doing like nightly events, and my cousins would also be there too. So every now and then we were doing the same thing with the toys, but we were also just doing like our own little charades and skits without a video camera. And then only when my uncle, who was living with my grandmother, got one of those old VHS cameras, that's when we're like, we should start filming this stuff just for fun. But keep in mind, I was probably about 10 when we were having these thoughts, and there was no way we were going to use like a couple of $1,000 camera to shoot these things. But we were always like writing different ideas of like, oh, this would be great to do as a movie one day. And then a few years later, I was on a vacation with my parents in South Carolina, made a couple of friends in a hotel that we stayed at. And my mom had just gotten a video camera. And it was one of the ones where you take the tape and you put in the VHS and then you could play it in your VCR. So we asked her if we could film something. She's like, okay, well, I got to use the camera, but just keep it safe, don't get into any trouble. And we did like this little murder mystery story around our hotel, and that's kind of where it all kicked off. Then the next thing you know, it was just getting my friends together every weekend and just filming short films all the time.
I love that, man. I love that. So, your parents were supportive? Were they in the arts, or did they come from some sort of entertainment background?
Not really. My dad is a dentist. He's semi-retired now. He's just mostly teaching. And then my mom at the time was working for a printing company in Manhattan. So, the thought was always they thought I would go into the medical profession as a kid. And, I really wasn't so sure. Like when I was very young, I was like, oh, I want to be president, but, didn't have that dream back then. And of course, I thought back and forth about maybe following the footsteps of my dad and even my grandpa, who was also a dentist. Actually, no, he was a medical doctor. Sorry. My uncle, my dad's brother, was also a dentist too. They had their own private practice together. So nobody, specifically that was, necessarily in the entertainment field, other than maybe like my cousins who dabbled in music, but that's as far as that went. So, um, in the beginning they were supportive. Then they weren't really sure if I was serious about it. So they, at a certain point when I was in high school, they heard about New York Film Academy and they were doing a summer program in the city. So they enrolled me in that because it was a 4 week program and it would show me how to shoot on celluloid film. So shooting on 16 millimeter with the Aeroflex cameras they used during World War II and editing on the Steenbeck table. So I actually have to physically do it, not
Mm,
do it digitally.
yeah.
So that was culture shock when I did that program. But what really helped the most was, for one, that I had some great mentors when I was there, most specifically Booker Madison, who right now he just did the movie The Sound of Christmas on BET. He worked with Neo in that and Soraya from Empire. He just did a movie on Tubi recently, Twisted Marriage Therapist. And at that time, he'd only done like a couple of music videos, a lot of Christian based short films. But he was, out of any of the mentors I had, the one who showed me how to block actors, how to do lighting, how to consolidate my shots so I could stay on schedule. So, really, that gave me the motivation and the confidence that I could really do this as a profession.
That's incredible. How pivotal was it for you to go to for your parents to allow you to go to the film school? Because, yeah, we all dabble in it as kids. We all play and we all goof around, but there's certain points in our lives where, this is a game changer. This could be a game changer.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It was just a total exposure of, not just like, here's the camera and then you just start filming stuff. No, there's so many intricacies that get involved in making a perfect shot and to tell your story visually. And what was great was, again, being on the field and actually working with the instructors to know how to do all these things and, have to be manageable about time, have to be manageable about keeping your cast and crew happy. And then they would also try to expose us to, not just mainstream cinema that was out there, but also a lot of independent films and foreign films to show us exactly what made those movies work and the different techniques and visual cues that I didn't always think about, when I'm watching, like, Ghostbusters or
right. Yeah.
Weapon. And now you come out of it, you look at all these things very differently from an artistic eye and not just as an audience goer. So that really was life changing for me, because after that, that's all I did. Was now I was really concentrating on all the technical aspects of trying to tell my story and not just shoot a free for all.
Right. I love that because, we are the sum of all of our experiences. So when you're exposed to those things, like you mentioned, foreign films, like I grew up in an entertainment industry family. Most of my family was music. So for me to go into acting and filmmaking was different. My mother was an actress for a while as well. But growing up, I used to watch the classics, like American classic comedies, The Three Stooges, I Love Lucy. And then my film go to were French films. So I would watch the French filmmaking techniques, which allowed me just a whole nother world of shooting and the way people receive the information of the storytelling. It's so important. Was it also important for you as a man of color to have other people around you that could show you, like take you under the wing and say, listen, this is what we can do.
Yeah, well, that's where Booker
Yeah.
Madison came in because there were few. I was the only black student in that program when we did it that summer. So he was the only next to him and another instructor named Tanya Steele, who actually I should credit as well because she was the one that really taught me about editing when I was there. And now she's gone on to do a number of WB shows. She worked on Doom Patrol and a number of other shows. They really were people of color that were in my field, both of whom I should also mention, by the way, NYU grads who worked under Spike Lee. So they knew the deal. They
Hmm.
knew
Hmm.
like what the potential was for people like us to be able to tell our stories and to have that effect on the audiences and put our personal touch to it. So that was something that I always kept in mind every time that I made a film after that. I always kept falling back to them in terms of the things that they taught me.
Absolutely. What kind of films are your specialty or do you enjoy making? Is there a
Uh,
certain kind?
I dabble around, I mean, I've mostly been on the action and the drama front for the most part. I've done comedy, I've done like little sci-fi, although I really would like to do something much bigger one day. But mostly in the action and drama departments, particularly with the Vendetta trilogy, really doing like a lot of technically difficult action sequences with guns and fight scenes and special effects, but not always letting that be the forefront. Like I like to focus on the characters, the conflicts, and the drama that goes on between them. And, again, have something that I think people can relate to that just goes beyond just a movie that's simply for entertainment value.
Absolutely. And I've seen some of your films. We actually have a mutual friend, an actor, Reginald Barnes.
Yes, I love Reginald.
Reginald was on the podcast. He is exceptional. I've seen him on stage and I've seen him on film. He's exceptional. He really is. How do you go about casting your films and what goes into actually making a film? I want to, give some of the business to the people that are watching because a lot of people don't know that there's a lot to it. It's not just go out and tomorrow you have a film. There's a lot that goes into it. What are some of the steps that goes into filmmaking?
Well, the abridged version of it is, first of all, you have to have a script and you should try to revise it as much as you can. So it's not just getting the story right, but if you're going to do it on your own, so taking it from an independent filmmaker's perspective, I like the idea of you just go all out on the first draft. Then you kind of hone it in on the later revisions. And if you're going to do it on your own, then you start being more budget conscious of it. Can you consolidate locations? Can you maybe cut down on characters because you start thinking about, how many company moves you have to do when you're filming in locations or how many mouths you have to feed on set, which is something over time that I've had to learn that sometimes having big crews and a lot of actors isn't always a good thing if it's not in your budget range. So once you get all that figured out, then you start doing your breakdowns of, this is the amount of characters you have, the amount of locations, the props that you need to get. And then you go about trying to get your crew together. And depending on the size of it, you definitely have to have a cinematographer. AD, an assistant director, is certainly important to keep organization on set. People that could help with the lighting, people that obviously could do the audio work for you, and that is also 50% of your whole movie. And any assistance with makeup and hair and filling whatever departments you can. And then once you pretty much have all that together, as far as fundraising, that could go a number of different ways, whether you're self-funding yourself or if you're doing crowdfunding campaigns, or if you really go out and you try to apply for grants or try to find investors and have like a business plan together for that. I've mostly done like the crowdfunding and the self-funding route with most of my work. And then as far as casting, I go for sites like Backstage. I think Film and TV Pro also has their casting thing. In fact, they're merged now. And, I would do the breakdowns and I'd get the submissions. Uh, Before COVID, I would try to do the auditions in person. Afterwards, it's just mostly been self-tape. So, just either monologues or to take a scene from the script and have that actor read it. And then maybe call them back if I feel like, okay, now I want to see a little bit more. And then once you pretty much figure who fits your vision and you bring them in, then it's just a matter of scheduling and going about it and just organizing to make sure that you go through your days without any issues and hassles. Yeah, and then of course there's post production, which is a whole other animal.
That's a lot. And that it's like I said, it's not overnight. It's definitely not overnight.
Oh
What
no.
do you do in terms of, well, two things. One, let's talk about crowdfunding just briefly. How do we go about crowdfunding? Do you have any advice, or how did you go about for some of your projects?
Well, I'll give you an example with Vendetta Games, my third feature. We tried to do Indiegogo at first, and we did a whole video presentation where, we had like an animated intro. We had me, myself, and the crew, and some of the actors as talking heads talking about the project. And and we had a lot of rewards as far as going from like a special thanks to possibly having like a small role in the movie, like a speaking part if you paid like a higher tier to donate. And we just had like a lot of text in there, and it really didn't catch on. And I feel like part of it was because not calling out names, but not everybody was sharing the link on social media,
Hmm.
and I felt like I was having to do a lot of the work myself. So it was like we were trying to raise about 3,000. We only got about like maybe $750 just
Mm.
because it just wasn't being pushed well enough. So then at a certain point after that was over, I said, okay, let me try Kickstarter because the whole all or nothing deal might be more of an urgency there, and you could get followers out of it. Whereas Indiegogo, there's no like you could follow this person if they have a new project. And I did something different. I cut down on the number of rewards I had. And then
Mm.
I did a new video where it was just me. And I was talking from the heart about why I wanted to make this film and really getting knee deep into my passion for filmmaking and for telling this story. That somehow by surprise resonated. And we were able to actually double our donations because we
Oh,
were
wow.
looking for 3,000. We ended up making about 350 hundred. So that was like maybe a big learning lesson that sometimes just speaking from the heart is enough, not having to have like a million voices in the room trying to be all Hollywood about it. So I think that was like really key in our success with crowdfunding.
That's good. I like that because you touched on a couple of things. One, you actually need support of the community. So, in the midst of what you're doing when you're creating, even just as a creator in any shape or form, you need the community support. So, when it comes time for you to produce your project, you can say, "Hey, just $1. If 1,000 people give me $1, that's 1,000. Just any amount of support can help." So that's really, really important.
Yeah, and the
What?
key also
Mhm.
is people invest in people more so than the idea.
Yes, there you go. People invest in people. Brilliant. When you're making films, what do you have as a vision? Do you envision films going to film festivals, or do you envision them going to TV networks, different films, different things, or how do you go about looking at that stuff?
It varies from project to project. So, we always do the film festival route just for the exposure and for networking purposes. And I mean, I've been through a lot for the last 10 years, as far as like we've gone to DC, we've obviously done festivals here in New York, in Jersey, even festivals overseas, which I haven't done yet, but one day I hope to do so. And so that's always been the thing. And then of course with distribution, like with Vendetta Games, we were fortunate with ITN distribution that they were able to put it on Tubi and on Amazon, as well as even with the DVD, putting into retailers like Walmart, Target, even Best Buy. And that was like such a big deal to me when that happened. Um,
That's huge. That's
yeah,
huge. It really is.
and it was very surreal when it happened.
Mhm.
Like even looking at it now on Tubi, being next to all these films I grew up on is still like one of those like magical moments for me as a filmmaker, one that I do not take for granted. But then there's other cases like my short film Dismissal Time, which was based on a personal experience that I had when I was in high school, and that's one that wasn't just about film festivals because the messaging in dealing with social justice and racial bullying in high schools was something that I felt needed to go beyond just film festivals. And one of my missions now that I'm working on is to actually get that played in high schools. And
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. Why is that important to you? And tell people what dismissal time is.
so, Dismissal Time is loosely inspired by an incident that happened to me when I was in high school. I was a freshman in a majority white high school in Staten Island, New York, on the South Shore. And I dealt with a lot of like just because there were few black students in my class, people kind of look at you a certain way, especially when you're not from that neighborhood. And there was a girl that I was interested in who was not of my race, and her friends were not fans of me for whatever reason. And one day, somebody decided to put out this rumor that I had written a hit list of students I didn't like.
Mm,
And I thought it was BS. I didn't believe it for a second. But then when the Columbine shooting happened, the very next day, I get called into the guidance counselor's office, and he shows me a physical copy of this list with my email address on it.
what?
And I flat out denied, like, I didn't write this. I never even seen this before. And so it became this whole internal investigation where they had to bring in my parents, interview my friends, because they thought maybe because I was too quiet and maybe not the most social person that they thought I was going to bring harm to someone. And then they came to the conclusion after talking to everybody that, okay, maybe he's not that person. So we'll try to exonerate him. We'll do an assembly. We'll try to get this cleared up so we could just move on from it. But when they did the assembly, all they did was just announce the school dance. They didn't even bother to mention this, and they just let it linger. So I was disgusted by it. I ended up leaving the school after that and held it in for a very long time. And then when George Floyd was murdered during COVID and all the protests were happening all across the country, I started to kind of speak out about my experience. And there was a little bit of a pushback from certain people privately that they didn't believe it. They thought, that's just fake unity. So I said, you know what, I got to make a movie of this. And I got to do a story that's not just about me, but also other stories I've heard about over the years about students of color that have been, harassed and bullied for whatever reason, because of maybe their gender, who they're interested in, whatever the case may be. And so, I went about making this movie as my first film after COVID, and I just felt very strongly about it because it was a very cathartic experience to have to relive all those things through my actors and
Sure.
through
Yeah.
the scenes I wrote. And I just felt so passionately about it that I just said, there have been all these festivals that I've gone to where people have come up to me afterwards and sometimes with tears in their eyes telling me about similar experiences that they faced. And I said, okay, there's something here.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is something we need to tap into and really try to get a message out there.
This is a commonality. You just hit the nail right on the head. It's something that resonates with a lot of us because people like you and me who go to majority white schools, we always have a pushback. There's always something there that we're fighting against. We want to fit in, but we're trying to maintain our uniqueness. And it's a time of self-discovery. But we tend to get more flack and more, things that we're up against. So things like that, that's absolutely not surprising to me. Absolutely not surprising. So we as artists, this is when our truth becomes exposed, is we create, we tell our stories. And that's what resonates with everybody else because we're being authentic. And it really has happened to a lot of people. It really has. Give us a brief synopsis of what the story's about, if you can.
Yeah, so the story
Because I
it's
want to put it out there. If this is something that's going to help people, we can get it into schools. I want people to know about this.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the movie takes place in a fictional prep school,
Mhm.
and part of the perspective is from a young man
Where I
named,
went.
yes, exactly.
Uh-huh. There you go.
And part of the perspective of the movie comes from this kid TK, who's like probably the only student of color in his class. And he's been targeted for bullying and being pushed around by other kids. He has interest in a white girl that may have interest in him. We're not really sure, if she's playing with him or not. And most people are pretty much just looking at this kid like he's from the other side of the tracks, except for his history teacher, Miss Vance, who actually believes he's a bright spot in his class and has potential in his future. And one day he's in class, he gets called to the guidance counselor's office. He sees that there's this hit list of students that he doesn't like. He denies it. But then when he goes home, he gets cyberbullied because apparently somebody was filming this conversation through the office door and putting it out there on the social media. So now he's being harassed and bullied even worse online
Mm,
and tries to take his own life. So now the perspective then changes to the teacher, Miss Vance, who finds out what happened and is told by the administration that we're investigating this, we're going to try to get it all figured out. If we can exonerate him, we'll make an announcement. But much like in my experience, they just announced a school dance instead, so she's pissed off and starts to go and do her own digging. So it takes on kind of an all the president's men type of deal where she starts grilling some of the students that may have had a hand in the situation. And when she
mm,
eventually does find out and bring her suspicions to the administration, then there's some serious pushback that gets very political, very heated, and it resolves itself in a way. I'm not going to, of course, spoil for people who haven't
right.
seen it, but it resolves itself in a way that clearly this is an epidemic that's still happening.
Absolutely. Why? Wow. Why is it important for you for people to see this?
It is
Just,
so, yeah,
mm,
it is so important for people to see it because I believe there are a lot of kids out there like myself who felt so vulnerable and so pushed around because of their skin color and not being accepted for the individuals that they are, that they don't know who to turn to half the time. They don't even sometimes trust their own teachers. And I really want to show that there are people out there like the character of Miss Vance that actually will listen, who can help. I should also mention that character is a composite of a number of teachers I've had over the years that have been very supportive of me and have even defended me at times that when I've been in situations. In fact, one in particular I got to mention here. My vice principal in high school, whose name was Wilma Myers, who I actually used to be like a school monitor for her. So when I had a lunch break, I would be in her office doing assistant work. And there was one day I can never forget. I was coming into school and I got pushed around by a few cops on the way to the lunchroom
mm,
before my classes started. And I didn't know why. And then the next thing you know, I got word from somebody that apparently there was a kid somewhere in the vicinity of the area who was possessing a weapon. And this kid had the same hat as I did, or same color hat, same black jacket that I had, and was black. So I
mm,
got profiled. And this woman literally defended me in front of one of these other teachers when I had to explain what was happening in the office. It's like, does anybody know who this kid is, who his family is, and so forth? Like, I could never forget that experience. And so I just say that to say that when you're young, you're very vulnerable. Your emotions are all over the place, but there are adults who can help, that can make a difference. And you should be able to be allowed to speak out when you go through these situations and not feel like you're alone.
absolutely. And not only allowed to speak out, we want people to speak out. We need the allies to help us in situations like that. That's traumatic. And I think every man of color has that experience. I definitely have that experience. I was a freshman in college. I went to Northwestern University. I'm 10 minutes in the place. And all of a sudden, I get a knock on the door from the sheriff of Evanston, Illinois, which we already know what its racial history is, goes way back. Uh, Someone just robbed the Kinkos, and you were identified in the freshman handbook as the person that did it. We need you to come down to the Kinkos to be identified by, the person that owns it. I'm like, what the hell's happening here? I don't even know. I don't even know what's happening here. So I grab my stuff, I go down, I'm shaking the whole time. One wrong thing and I'm gone. I have to fight the whole legal system. Luckily, I get there and there was an Asian woman who was the owner of this Kinko's. And she looked at me and she said, "No, that's not him." Now, just imagine if she said, "Yes, that's him."
Mm.
I was already traumatized enough. But those are the things we go through just as people of color. just as a young Black man, on the college campus, someone I mistakenly identifies you as the person who committed a crime, and then you're gone. It's it's horrible. It's
No,
horrible.
so you had to go through that.
Right. And so those are experiences we have, and that's why a film like what you have is very important. I also happen to know that you got a little award for that one, right? Or someone in the cast did a stellar performance,
Yeah,
or everyone I'm sure did, but recognition.
yeah.
Yeah,
We got a couple of awards. My lead actress, Lisa Regino, won Best Actress at the Carpe Diem Film Festival that's out in Europe. And we also got the Best Human Rights Award from the New York True Venture Film Festival and the Audience Award at the Indie Short Film Series, which is in Charlottesville. That was a big deal
congratulations. Yeah, that's huge.
in there.
That's wow.
Yeah,
You ever think about putting anything on like PBS maybe with this?
that was something I've been
Hmm.
looking into, and I'm still
Yeah,
trying to find more information about it. But I would definitely put this on PBS.
yeah. That might be the alternative because definitely we need people to see this and learn from it. And like you said, in the schools is great too, but wherever it can go, we need people to follow behind and there's a lesson to be learned there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What do you have coming up in the future? You've got a lot of incredible work. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, so my next film that's coming out is The Last Vendetta, which is the third and final chapter of my Vendetta trilogy, which began with Dishonorable Vendetta and then Vendetta Games. And just with the little bit I could say, it's these characters who are DEA agents, myself, and then my partner, played by Chris Carula Jr. We have a situation where something happens with our boss from the DEA, and it happens at the same time that a certain character from our past resurfaces who has a little bit of a tie-in with some tragedy that happened with my partner, and things get very heavy and very heated very quickly. And from the trailer that we put out and the response that we got, it's on a whole nother level than anything that I've ever done before.
Ooh. Well, don't forget I'm an actor. If you need some actors in this, listen, the Vendetta Games was fire. I was watching it last night again.
Yeah.
So tell everybody where we can find all your information and where we can find, your film and your work. This has been
Yeah,
incredible.
everything Linktree/AJEPYX. The easy way to get to that link is probably through my Instagram at AJEPYX, and also my new website, AndreMJoseph.com. You can find out more about me there, along with my films and even my program that I'm going to be tying in with Dismissal Time called Bright Spot. So it's a program designed for the schools to not only just show the film, but to do a talk back and possibly, depending on time, a improv session to put teachers and students in the shoes of the
I
characters
love
of the
this. I
film.
love this.
Yeah, and try to, show that perspective and what's learned from it. So definitely check that out too, because that's something we're pushing at the moment.
I love this. Man, please keep me in mind. I want to help out any way that I can. André Joseph, you are incredible. Keep inspiring the community, keep shining, keep doing some important work and some fun work to watch too. All the best. Please come back to the show. Also, check out the podcast. You'll find the link. I'll put all the links down in the bottom of the notes of this. Everyone who's watching, follow him. Go to the website, the new website, AndreMJoseph.com or AJEpix.productions.com. Also, right?
Yes.
You got it. You'll find all the links to his social media. Follow him, follow him, follow him. Hopefully, I can put a trailer in this podcast and you'll get to take a look at some of his work. We thank you for coming on the show. Follow me at OneMicNite, OneMicNite. It's OneMicNite. Or you can slide into my DMs at Marcos Luis, MarcosLuis. I'm so excited, as you can see. Thank you for joining me, everybody. We'll see you next time on OneMicNite. Bye.